I'm here with Christopher.
What's up?
You're gonna have to find a
Yeah.
space. As you guys know, for me, travel has always been about connecting with locals. So while in Atlanta, I decided to pass the mic to Christopher and have a conversation about some of our shared passions: animal liberation, activism, intersectionality, and some other cool stuff. This is the first video in a new series I'm doing on this channel called Pass the Mic. I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts on these topics too. We're gonna find a comfortable spot and then we're gonna have a little chat about
Yeah.
veganism in Atlanta.
Want to have some fun conversation. Looking forward to it.
As we said, this is Christopher. Christopher, do you want to maybe introduce yourself first of all? Like, who are you exactly and what do you do here? Just a brief summary.
Yeah, I'm Christopher Eubanks. Christopher Eubanks. Some people know me as Soul Eubanks online, and I've been an animal rights activist for about 7 years now. A vegan for about 8 years. Wow, time goes by fast. And I helped to organize Atlanta's first ever animal rights march in 2019. We did the same march again in 2022. And I've done a variety of actions in Atlanta, from organizing with Mercy for Animals, PETA, the Animal Save Movement, Anonymous for the Voiceless. I was over some of those chapters here in Atlanta. I was a co-organizer. And yeah, I've done, I don't know, hundreds of activities and actions and events in Atlanta. So, a little bit of me and my background in Atlanta.
Right. So this is exactly why I wanted to interview you like this and have it out there on YouTube, because I think you're an amazing person to talk to about veganism in Atlanta specifically.
Thank you.
So some quick questions, some initial questions, just to get to know you a little bit more. How long have you been vegan personally?
Yeah, so about 8 years. I don't know the exact date. I just remember watching Cowspiracy in the summer of 2016. And that's when I learned about the impact of animal agriculture on our entire society, but specifically in regards to how it impacts the environment. And I really thought I was like being a really good environmentalist at the time. And here I was eating these animal products that contribute negatively to the environment. And once I saw that, I said, okay, I guess I have to stop consuming animal products now. And I did that and went vegan that same day, essentially. Well, I'll say I went plant based because I stopped eating all animal products. Like, the philosophy of veganism didn't quite sink in yet, but I understood that I couldn't eat animal products and still be the environmentalist that I wanted to be. So, yeah, the summer of 2016, which is right about now. So I don't know the exact day, but I always celebrate it in the summertime.
Amazing. That's the same reason I went vegan as well in 2018. So just a couple of years later, I actually saw Cowspiracy in 2015, and I was on the edge of going vegan myself in 2015. And then at the time, I was with someone who was watching it, and they made a lot of excuses about why not to go vegan, and so I was influenced by them. But I was already kind of leaning towards veganism, and it was a couple of years later that I met somebody who made me go vegan as well for the environment.
Okay.
And then welfare came later as well for me.
Similar paths.
Yeah. And so what is it that drew you to veganism? Was it environmentalism alone at first?
Yeah, so it was about being a better environmentalist, but as I was starting to learn more during that first year, I started to connect with the ethics of it. I think the thing that really stood out to me and why it resonated with me so much is because I had never really thought about animal rights as a social justice issue. I just thought that I grew up in a society where we consume animals. I never really gave it a second thought. I mean, I'm sure I've seen things from PETA in my lifetime and maybe have seen some footage of animal abuse, but it never really resonated as a social justice issue. But the more and more I was exposed to learning about it and getting information specifically about animals being treated cruel in animal agriculture and seeing violent slaughterhouse footage, I realized that, wow, this is something that is not consistent with my morals. And what made it worse is that I was actually paying for it. I was contributing to that mass scale of violence. I think it's one thing when we see other social justice issues and things happening to other groups and we're not necessarily participating in their oppression, but I was participating in consuming these animals' bodies and wearing their bodies and testing on their bodies for body products. And once I realized that, I said, oh, wow, not only do I have to stop doing this, I have to speak out because so many people don't even think of this as a social justice issue. So that's what really pulled me in and made me began to not only become vegan but also advocate for animal rights.
Fantastic. And that's where that kind of trope of pushy vegan comes from, right? You kind of go vegan having been educated to consume animal products for health reasons or just that it's natural, it's always been done that way. And then you go vegan and you're like, everyone needs to know about this. You know, this is something that we're not educated on. So, one question I have for you, and this one I get a lot as well.
Mm.
Do you advocate for perfectionism when it comes to veganism? Does everyone have to be 100% perfect in their consumption of animal products or not consuming animal products?
Well, I think that is it's a very easy question to answer, but it's also complex because veganism is not about perfectionism. So even as vegans, we do things to harm animals. Like we're sitting on this bench, we probably sat on ants. We probably
Yeah. So
walked over here.
I'm being bitten
Yeah,
by
yeah.
ants
Right.
and mosquitoes. I'm on your side.
Exactly. So even as vegans, we still harm animals. So in that way, we can't be 100% perfect, right? Because it's practically impossible to do that. But I think what really determines if you're vegan or not is what you do with the options that you have. So 100% of the time, when you have the option, and it's a realistic, practical, viable option, you shouldn't contribute to the exploitation of animals. That's where I think people may misunderstand what veganism is about.
Yes.
So, like I said earlier, 100% of the time in our society, you're going to harm, you're going to do things that harm animals. But when you really have the options to pick and choose which products you purchase and buy, I do think then it becomes a moral imperative. Because if you can't justify purchasing these products that harm animals, then why should you? Because it is a moral question at that point. When you're driving down the road and you're driving over ants or hitting flies with your car, there's not really much you can do about not driving or not walking. But if you have the option to go into a store and you have the budget to actually buy these products that don't contribute to harming an animal, then it becomes a moral question. So 100% of those times,
Yeah.
you should actually stand in solidarity with animals.
Yeah, fantastic answer. I like that a lot. So it's not about perfectionism, but about being as vegan as is practically possible, right? That's the definition, isn't it?
Exactly.
Or is it practicably possible?
Yeah, one of those words, yeah, in one of those ways, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So let's move on to veganism in Atlanta specifically. Is it easy to be vegan in Atlanta? Let's answer that one first, because I think that's one of the main drawbacks that a lot of people face is, or one of the doubts that people have
Yeah.
is it's too hard to be vegan. There's too much to think about. Is it easy to be vegan in Atlanta?
Well, it's been easy for me. I mean, I think anytime you take on a new philosophy, I think it takes some adjusting. So I think the first time that I was learning how to drive, it was I think maybe up until the first year, I was a little nervous and I was driving, but scared to drive on the highway and just, I was uncomfortable. But over time, it became a lot easier. And I think veganism is the same way. But in Atlanta, there's so many vegan restaurants and so many restaurants with plant-based menus and alternatives that I guess I've become so accustomed and used to it. It's not even something that I think about. I want to say that's kind of a similar reaction to people when they become vegan also. For the most part, I don't want to say regardless of where they live, but especially in major cities. If you're in places where there's a lot of accessibility, I think it's probably easier than not. But in Atlanta specifically, yeah, we have tons of restaurants, especially in the West End area. I don't know if you've been to the West End area
West
yet.
End, is that kind of where you picked it up from?
No,
it's the other side.
Yeah, so it's near Ralph David Abernathy.
Tell the viewers, because they're the ones watching this who are in Atlanta or visiting Atlanta. Where can they go to find vegan food? Where's good?
Yeah, so if you're in the West End in Atlanta, like that is the spot. That's probably the most vegan accessible spot in Georgia. I almost want to say in the United States. There's so many vegan restaurants right on that same strip. You have Healthful Essence. You have the first vegan restaurant in Atlanta, Soul Vegetarian.
Oh, I went there the other day.
Okay.
Really good. Really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're vegan, although the name is Soul Vegetarian. They were vegan before it was like, I guess, in the know. So they were Soul Vegetarian then, but they're still Soul Vegetarian now.
Okay.
So you have them. You have Wadada, which is like a black-owned vegan marketplace, like a small vegan marketplace. You have a I forget the name of it, but it's like a vegan Hebrew cake shop right there. Also, you have Slutty Vegan, you have the Sillies. It's so many restaurants on that one strip, and this is a
Beautiful.
historic part of Atlanta. This is Ralph David Abernathy. Those of you all that are familiar with Martin Luther King, Ralph David Abernathy was an A of Martin Luther King, and yeah, so it's a lot of history in that part of Atlanta, and all of these places that I just mentioned are black owned, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah, all of them.
fantastic. That's
So
great.
yeah,
I've been to
it's very
Slutty Vegan
accessible.
a few times
Yeah,
now. I love.
you've been
I had
solidified.
it last. Yeah, I had it last night. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
I love Slutty Vegan. That's the first place I tried. In fact, there's a vlog I did of my first ever time in Atlanta. I've been here quite a while now, actually, in
Oh,
and out. But the first ever time I came to Atlanta, the first night I arrived, I ordered from Slutty Vegan. That's in a vlog. I'll link it right here. And I also did a vlog with a friend of mine where we went to Slutty Vegan and I sat down and I reviewed the food that I ate there. So
that's the
that's a
experience.
yeah,
You have to go in and
that's
get. You
another
can order it, but it's not the same experience as
yeah.
if you go in there.
It truly it's an experience going to
Yeah,
Slutty
it
Vegan.
really
Yeah,
is
it's a
nice.
beautiful atmosphere, great vibe.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'll link that vlog right here as well. So yeah, lots of and there's a bunch of other vegan restaurants that I've already reviewed in Atlanta and did vlogs on. So
Mm.
let's try and think of what else. Planted Soul,
Okay, I haven't been there yet.
that's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
soul food. Again, soul food, guys. How
yeah,
can I
you gotta
describe?
let.
It's
Yeah,
so good. It's
that's
so
that's
good.
soul vegetarian. They actually have. Well, they had two soul vegetarians. I think it's just one now. But also even outside of the restaurants, uh, there's a pantry, a vegan food pantry that is in the south side of Atlanta. I forget the name of it. I think it's called Vegantry. And just outside of going to restaurants, there's other ways to get vegan options. So I used to go there. I don't have any shame in saying that. A few years ago, I was going through some hard times financially, and I was going to the food pantry on a consistent basis. And even still now, if there's a free food refrigerator in our community, and if I need to go there now, I still will. But they have some vegan options there. But even this vegan food pantry was made accessible to the community.
Okay.
So even if you aren't able to go to the restaurants, there's still other options outside of just going to some of these restaurants
Yeah,
that we mentioned.
absolutely. And then there's also, I think it's important to mention that most vegan food is the cheapest food you can possibly buy in a supermarket, right?
Yeah,
Rice, beans, lentils, vegetables, like those things are so accessible for everyone. So that is accessible all over the world. That's not even specific to Atlanta.
and it's one thing that's funny about that is that people tend to forget those foods are vegan when they think of
Yeah,
vegan foods.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, if those foods were looked at as vegan, then maybe
yeah.
people would think they are more accessible.
Right.
I think people instinctively know that
Yeah,
beans and rice is vegan,
yeah.
but when we think about vegan food, those aren't the ones that come to mind.
It's
We
not
think
just
about,
tofu and quinoa. I
yeah,
think
exactly,
that's what people
yeah,
think about the
hmm
fancy stuff, the stuff that has to be imported, the fake meat that is kind of expensive.
hmm
That's not what veganism is about.
yeah. You
That's
can
not,
eat
yeah,
those, but that's
yeah,
not solely what it's about exactly, like you're
right.
saying.
Fantastic. Okay, so it is easy to be vegan in Atlanta. That's the answer to that
For
question,
me, it
isn't it?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say for me, it's pretty easy. I've been doing this for about 8 years. I will say that if you're new to becoming a vegan, yeah, there's some learning curve that you have to adjust to. But I think once you start to get past that learning curve, it becomes a lot easier. But in Atlanta, there's so many choices, so many options,
Yeah.
and things are readily available.
Beautiful. And then I have one more personal question for you. So
Mhm.
this is just about you. In what way did your life change personally when you went vegan?
When I became vegan, the way that my life really changed is I started thinking about the sentience of other individuals. I started to realize that the things that I do have more of an impact than I ever thought. Like I was really paying for the slaughter of animals my entire life, and I never thought about the things that I do having a direct impact and on the life and death of an individual. So I was just paying for these products, but I didn't see what was on the other side. Once I started seeing slaughterhouse footage and making that connection, I started to be more cautious and mindful of the things that I do in my everyday life, and how that may have a adverse reaction in the universe and in the world. So how I talk to people, how I interact with people, how I communicate with people. I started being a lot more conscious of my energy and how I project myself because it does have a ripple effect on
Yeah.
others. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the things that really resonated with me when I became vegan. I really started thinking about how my actions have a greater impact outside of just the individual choices that I make.
Yeah, fantastic. That kind of positive cycle of if you kindness begets kindness, like
Hmm.
you're kind to animals and so you end up being kinder to people too and you end up just being kinder all round, right? And then that
Yeah.
has a ripple effect as you said.
Hmm.
Well, we need more kindness in the world,
Yeah,
don't we? We really
absolutely.
do.
And if you aren't kind, then that also has a ripple effect. Like
Yeah,
the energy that you put out ultimately ends up somewhere.
yeah.
So who knows where to end up? But if you're doing things that are not that are inconsistent with the type of world that you want to see, then that's what you're creating.
Yes, absolutely. I think we forget often how much agency we have, right? How much agency we have as individuals.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now I want to talk to you a little bit more about your work in
Yes,
Atlanta.
for sure.
So, you've already talked a little bit about the organizations that you've worked with. On in the last few years, what have been like your highlights or things that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I would say over the last couple of years, the thing that I'm most proud of is the nonprofit that I've started, Apex Advocacy. So I was working at another animal rights organization, and it was a great experience. And I was doing actions and activities with other organizations, but I really wanted to collaborate with more people of color. And we had a fairly diverse community in Atlanta, but I started to travel a bit more and started to interact with more activists around the U.S. and just started to see how predominantly white the vegan space and the animal rights space is. So I started my nonprofit Apex Advocacy, and our whole goal is to get more people of color involved in animal activism. We started that at the end of 2020. And yeah, our board is diverse, our team is diverse, and essentially, I'm the executive director. And we've worked on a few campaigns. We got a backyard, we helped to get an illegal backyard slaughterhouse shut down here in Atlanta.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the slaughterhouse was slaughtering about 100 animals a month. So we worked with the community over the course of maybe a year and a half to help get that slaughterhouse shut down. The community had been working on this for 6 or 7 years. So we kind of came in towards the end of that fight, but we did help with a lot of the things that they were doing towards the end. So we got that slaughterhouse shut down. That was probably one of the crowning achievements over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
We
that's
had to,
amazing. What
yeah.
happened to the animals?
So the way the county set up the restrictions around closing of the slaughterhouse is that the animals were no longer able to be present at the at the facility by a certain date.
Okay.
So I honestly don't know if the animals were sent somewhere else, if he actually killed them. I actually don't know what happened to the animals at the end, but I do know that no more animals were slaughtered
Yeah,
there uh, going forward from that date.
right.
I would love to say that, someone adopted the animals and they were sent to a sanctuary, but the way the slaughterhouse was set up, I'm almost certain that they were slaughtered before they were killed,
Right,
unfortunately.
right. Yeah. Because one of the main arguments that some people say is if everyone went vegan, what will we do with all the animals? Right? What would you say to somebody if they said that?
I would say that it's not something that we would have to deal with in one day. It's something that would happen over the course of decades and generations, honestly. So it would be just like when people converted from riding horses and buggies uh, and driving cars, like that transition didn't happen overnight. I'm pretty sure people were saying the same thing. What are we going to do with all the horses and the
Yeah.
buggies? Like, just relax. We'll still,
Everyone calm
yeah,
down.
calm down.
Yeah.
Just don't think this is going to snap our fingers like Thanos and
Yeah.
things are going to change overnight.
Yeah.
No, so we have time to figure out how to change all of these systems. But that's what would happen. Over time, we would stop forcefully breeding all of these animals into existence
Yeah.
and we would transition into systems that don't exploit animals. So
Yes.
we would have decades, if not generations, to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a gradual process. They'll be
Hmm.
sent to sanctuaries. They just won't be bred into existence in the first place. It's a gradual process. Yeah.
For sure.
This I've been very excited to talk to you about this actually. The term intersectionality, I think it needs to be used more widely. I don't think that many people know about this yet. What does intersectionality mean? Could you explain that to
Yeah,
everybody?
so Kimberly Crenshaw is the person that created this term in the late 80s, I believe. She's a lawyer. And I don't want to, I don't know the exact definition off the top of my head. Essentially, when various forms of oppressions exist, and ultimately when they're coming from a same source. So if you're a black woman in society, you're being discriminated against because you have a sexist system that is oppressive, but you also have a system that oppresses black people. So, as a black woman, you are at the intersection of those types of oppressive systems. So
Right.
that's what intersectionality is in a bite-sized way to kind of explain it in a very simple format.
Yeah.
And we apply that at Apex to all of our work and all of our campaigns because Apex is an acronym. It stands for Animal Protection, Equality, Intersectionality.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, fantastic.
So it's
Yeah.
built into everything that we do. Although we are a organization that advocates for animal rights, that's the core of what we do. We are an animal rights organization, but we do absolutely acknowledge the intersectionality that happens when you're advocating for animals as humans. Um, because as us as activists, we come into advocacy with emotional baggage. We come with things on our minds and on our hearts, and we can't just turn off those things just because we want to advocate for animals. I can't stop being black just because I'm an animal rights activist now. So that impacts how I show up at actions. Do I engage with the police? Do I not? Do I have a police liaison with me? Am I more likely to do actions that are, I guess, less intense because of the color of my skin?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one that's standing out in a disruption or in a situation where we're freeing animals.
Right.
So I have to think about that intersection as I do animal advocacy. So
Right.
that's those are some examples of why addressing intersectionality is important,
Yeah.
and how animal rights needs to observe and acknowledge that more.
Yes. Okay. So that answers my next question, which was how is veganism related to racism? That's part of it. Anything else where veganism and racism intersect?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the people that are in these systems of exploiting animals are people of color that are being exploited by these oppressive systems. There are stats about the amount of people that are being injured in the slaughterhouse work because they're working around such deadly machinery. They're breathing in all of these toxic chemicals to process animals' bodies, and a large part of those people are people of color, are marginalized people. So the people that are literally slaughtering these animals are also being marginalized because these industries look at disadvantaged, marginalized people to fill these jobs. You don't have people with PhDs and doctorate degrees working in
Yeah.
slaughterhouses,
Yeah.
and typically the people that are in these positions are low income people that don't have a lot of opportunities. Unfortunately, in our society, often that's people of color.
Yeah.
So that's one way that this issue intersects, and also just with food justice. I know we spoke earlier about how veganism is accessible, but we also have to acknowledge that there is food injustice in our society. Some communities don't have as much access to certain types of foods than others. Some communities have a very limited amount of access to proper food, to healthy, whole food. So, unfortunately, again, those communities that experience that are typically low income, marginalized Black and Brown communities. So, those are also some ways that veganism and animal rights intersect with
Yeah.
race.
In the UK, it's also kind of like that, where a lot of our slaughterhouse workers are immigrants. And
Mm.
so, again, it's the exploitation of people that intersects with the exploitation of animals. So, we can target them all at once with certain solutions like veganism, right? Or making it more accessible.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
This one
Mm-hmm.
might be a tough one. Is
Okay.
veganism political?
Veganism is very political. The way that animals are slaughtered in our society is largely due to policy and politics. Our society would not be slaughtering 80 to 90 billion animals every year if it wasn't for government subsidies. So that is a political issue. The amount of funding that goes to slaughter animals in our society versus how much funding goes to foods that are intentionally vegan is astronomical. It's like 2 to 1 I think it's 50 billion for animal agriculture and like maybe 24 billion for whole foods plant-based options.
Oh wow.
At least in the U.S. is that way, but largely around the world it's still the same type of numbers.
Yeah.
So that's a policy thing. If there wasn't policy backing the funding of animal agriculture, the world may be a lot closer to being vegan than it is now. So it is absolutely political. There's no way that we are ever going to, achieve animal liberation without some type of political policy change. It just isn't a realistic thing in my mind to think we will ever get that, ever achieve animal liberation without addressing any type of policy.
Yeah. And so you can access or you can help with veganism in so many different ways, right? There's political activism, there's, like we said about intersectionality, there's many different causes there to help with. You
Hmm.
can, on an individual level, be an activist just by being vegan. I feel like that's also a form of activism, right? And talking to people about it.
Hmm.
And then this is a really interesting one. We've kind of talked about this before. What forms of activism do you think are the most effective? So, what things have you tried? What things have worked the best? What things do you feel like would be the most effective forms?
Yeah, I have a unique approach to answering this. In my perspective, I think the type of activism that is most effective is the type of activism that is the most resonated with the person doing the actions. So, for instance, if I am someone who is just terrified of doing a animal rescue, sure, that rescue may save an animal's life. But what if I were able to put my time and energy towards doing something that I was more comfortable with over the course of my lifetime? What type of impact would that have on animal advocacy and the ending the exploitation of animals? So I would say whatever type of activism that resonates with you, that is sustainable for you, is the one that's the most successful, is the one that's the most impactful. Because if you're doing, this is why people burn out, because they're doing things that aren't in line with who they're they aren't doing things in alignment with their strengths.
Yeah.
They're doing things that they're being told are more effective or more impactful, and they're doing these things time and time again. And
Like a checklist, like a
yeah.
one size fits all checklist, which isn't
Hmm.
really. Are you saying that's not the most effective way? You pick the thing that suits your personality or your skill set?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then that's how you contribute. Some people may be accountants in animal advocacy. It may be a lot more impactful for them to help with the back end operations than it is for them to show up at a protest.
Yeah.
And sure, are they quote unquote saving animals or being public? No, but even
We need people like that. Yeah.
that is what constitutes an entire movement. Even in the civil rights movement, there were so many people with Dr. Martin Luther King. It wasn't just him. It
Yeah.
wasn't just Malcolm X. It wasn't just these people that we, put on these pedestals. It was an army of people doing a variety of different things, doing research to find out. I remember I was reading this book. This is an uprising. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I'm not, no.
I forget the author, but it spoke about Dr. King's approach, not even his approach, but the strategy that they used on the civil rights movement, and they would intentionally start an action knowing how many people would go to jail. And when those people would go to jail, they knew the number of people that would fill up the jails, and then they would start the second phase of their action.
Oh, wow.
So I don't imagine Dr. King was the one that was sitting up calculating
Yeah.
how many people were going to jail and doing the research.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he was. I'm not taking that or discrediting
Yeah.
that research from him if he did, but there's a lot of people doing that type of work to
Yeah.
contribute to movement. So I say the type of activism that is best is the one that resonates with you the most.
Fantastic. So for me, I'm a chatty person. This is me doing it. so I'll talk to people like yourself, and I'll record, and I'll put this out there. And now look at that. That's half an hour.
Wow,
Of,
really?
yeah, I know. We've been talking
Whoa.
for a while.
Okay.
It's half an hour of so much important and valuable
Yeah.
information. And those are all the questions that I had, actually. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Is there anything that I've missed out, or anything else that you want to tell people?
Yeah, I would just say just stay in touch with our nonprofit Apex Advocacy.
I'll put the link in the description, and I'll
Yeah,
put a link here, a card. Yeah.
yeah, check our workout. If you're a person of color and you're interested in getting involved in animal advocacy, definitely check out our work. And even if you're not a person of color, you can still follow our work, be involved with what we're doing. We'll give updates about the work that we're doing. We have online monthly activism trainings that we make available to the public. So there's a variety of ways to be involved with the work that we're doing. But yeah, continue
I
to
actually have one more
support us.
question. That's just off the top of my dome. I just thought of one.
Okay.
What are the barriers that are stopping people of color from what? Why is it that it's so white dominated?
Oh, that's a very complicated question.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things is that there is a power structure within the animal advocacy space that just isn't diverse. When you look at the people that are making the decisions, that are funding a lot of these activities and actions, it's just not very diverse. And it trickles down throughout the space also. And, so that's one element. Also, when this is why intersectionality is so important, because when you have people that are fighting for their freedoms alongside trying to fight for the freedoms of animals, it takes its toll. And a lot of people leave the movement or don't connect with veganism. We see how veganism is portrayed. We were talking earlier about how people think the veganism is tofu and quinoa. It's much more than that. But even with thinking about tofu and seitan, these are actually foods that come from communities of color. Like tofu originated in China, seitan originated in China, seitan originated in Java. So
quinoa in South America.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that part of the narrative isn't told. Like we just look at these foods as these new exotic foods, but these are foods that have rich heritage, especially to communities of color.
Yes.
So when we don't get that narrative, that's just another level of separation from why you may not see as many people of color thinking that they are connected to veganism.
Absolutely.
So it's a combination of those types of things.
Interesting. That resonates with me personally as well. Like, as you know, I'm from Sri Lanka, and so much Sri Lankan food is naturally vegan already. And actually, my mom thought it was hilarious that I went vegan because she was like, "You're just going back to how I grew up in a village in Sri Lanka when we brought you to the UK for a better life," you know. And so there's that's intersectionality too. This idea that living in the West somehow is better for you in terms of diet or in terms of education or in terms of anything, when really a lot of Western people who are wealthy and are looking for healthy options go back to eating like my parents did when they were children in rural Sri Lanka.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I hope this was enjoyable and informative for you guys to watch as well. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I mean, we could do a part 2 if those questions come in quickly, you know.
Hopefully so. Yeah, let's see. Maybe I'll come out to where you are and finish the part 2.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Christopher. So much respect for your work and everything you've been doing in your adult life in terms of veganism, animal liberation, activism in general. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
We found our spot. This is very intimate.
It was very, but that's how it is in video. You sit uncomfortably close to people when you vlog. It doesn't matter though.
No, it's good. It's good. We're filling the frame. What are these?
These are some cheap vegan snacks that I found. Actually, I found them on discount in Kroger. That's one thing that I do. I always go to Kroger. I always check for the discount section.
Oh, nice.
These are like 50 cents.
Oh, I go to Publix for the BOGO.
Oh, yeah, same thing, same concept.
Yeah.
That's what I started doing when I became vegan. So, I've never seen this snack before, but it's got all the things that it is. So vegan at the top.
Yep.
I've been trying to reduce my intake of gluten.
Yeah.
And it's these little small bite-sized snacks. So yeah.
Try some.